Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We still have some attendees joining, so we're going to give everyone another minute before we get started. In the meantime, please make sure to locate the Q&A button in the Zoom control panel at the bottom of your screen, and feel free to submit any questions you have for our speakers today. We'll do our best to answer as many as we can during the webinar. For now, make yourselves comfortable, and we'll get started in about 60 seconds. Hello, everyone who's joining us. First, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. We sincerely appreciate you taking the time to be with us today, and I hope you take this opportunity to ask our team any questions you may have on the updates that we're going to go through today. This is the second webinar that we're doing as part of our ongoing Navigating the COVID-19 Pandemic series. As circumstances continue to change rapidly around this pandemic, we'll be working to provide the most up-to-date and actionable information for multi-location brands during this unprecedented time. In today's webinar, we're going to be reviewing some of the most recent updates to GMB and third-party platforms over the past couple of weeks. And if you missed the first part in our series, you can watch the recording on demand, which can be found on the COVID resources page on our website. Just a few housekeeping items to go over before we get started today. All attendees will be kept on mute throughout the webinar, but we do welcome any questions you may have. Please send them to us by clicking on the Q&A button on the Zoom control panel, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can throughout the webinar. However, if we don't get to your question, we will be sure to follow up with you via email. And please feel free to send us any additional questions that you may have after the webinar to marketing@rioseo.com or through Twitter. And finally, we are recording today's webinar and we'll be sending the link within 24 hours, so please look out for a follow-up email from our team. Now let me quickly introduce myself and today's panel. My name is Justin Gianninoto and I am the Director of Marketing at Rio SEO. I will be moderating today's webinar, and I'm fortunate to be joined by two of my colleagues. Krystal Taing is the Director of Local Strategy at Rio SEO and a Google My Business Gold product expert. Hey, Krystal, would you briefly introduce yourself today?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Justin, and thanks again for everyone joining. I know things are crazy and it's really busy, so we appreciate the time. As Justin said, Director of Local Strategy here at Rio SEO. Been, doing my best to keep up with all of the changing elements kind of due to coronavirus, and best advise, our brands and partners. So we'll do my best to provide strategy and guidance and answer any questions.
Thanks, Krystal. And today we also have Ryan Weber, who is the Director of Client Success at Rio SEO. And Ryan, would you briefly introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Justin. And thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm Ryan Weber, Director of Client Success here at Rio. Work closely with our client base and our account management team here to make sure we're staying on top of all these changes and really translating that into a local strategy for our clients and partners.
Thank you both. Really excited to have you with us today. And let's go ahead and jump into the content that we're going to be covering. So as I mentioned previously, today we're going to be focusing on some of the most recent updates that we're seeing to GMB and other third-party platforms. Those include some delays that we're seeing in GMB listings updates for non-healthcare businesses, GMB's temporary suspension of reviews and Q&A, some updated Yelp review guidelines, the new GMB COVID-19 post type, temporary closures, new GMB attributes for restaurants, as well as new COVID-19 notices on listings and events. just a few of the items that we're going to go through today. But as I mentioned, we're happy to take your questions throughout the webinar. So if there are any topics that we aren't covering, please feel free to send those through. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started with something that has definitely been affecting many enterprise brands. Now is obviously a critical time to communicate changes to your business, including special hours of operation or any unique services you may be offering. However, we are definitely seeing that Google has been noticeably slower to publish changes, in particular with non-healthcare businesses. So jumping in, Krystal, maybe you can start off and talk a little bit about what kinds of delays we're currently seeing and if there is anything brands can do to ensure updates are published in a timely manner.
Yeah, so the one thing I would kind of preface is that one of the main reasons why we're seeing delays with non-healthcare businesses making edits to a number of their profile fields on Google My Business is because Google's also cut back their resources and their staffing to make sure their workforce is safe and healthy. So just keep that in mind. I know it's frustrating for businesses, but they're dealing with it the same way everyone else is. But yeah, essentially to almost every field for non-healthcare organizations outside of Google Posts, special hours, description, and attributes are seeing anywhere from like a 3 to 5 day delay, sometimes a little bit longer. And right now I'm just seeing a lot of oddities with hours and temporarily closures, seeing lots of reports of businesses getting marked temporarily closed, even though they're offering, pickup hours and those types of things. So this is really the time to keep an eye on what's going on with your GMB account. Definitely take a look at those suggested updates from Google because they're getting a lot of new data sources coming in. So I would definitely, keep an eye on what's happening on your listings, the information that's there. And then for healthcare verticals, I'm also seeing hours and temp closures issues. So while they are getting prioritized with Google to make edits, they're still, succumb to some of the oddities with data cleanliness that's happening in GMB right now with all their new sources of data.
Absolutely. And obviously, as circumstances continue to change, that may continue to evolve. But I think that's helpful for brands to have an understanding of, at least for the time being. So switching gears just a little bit, in the last webinar that we hosted, we touched a little bit on reputation management and review response. And since then, GMB has made some changes. Yelp has also made some updates to their review guidelines, which we'll touch on in a moment, which include temporarily suspending new reviews, at least for GMB, review responses, as well as Q&A. So jumping over to Ryan, can you discuss what these changes mean for brands and any recommendations that you might be able to offer that brands can use to adapt to these changes?
Yeah, this is really a great example, of how fluid the situation is, right? On the last webinar we did in this series, it was about 2 weeks ago. At that point, we were advising brands, to pay extra close attention to reviews, to Q&A, and to even proactively post some questions in Q&A. And I think it was a day later, Google went ahead and suspended all reviews and Q&A. So obviously there's a good need to have these sort of ongoing updates. I think the important thing to keep in mind here, Google is obviously the largest source of local business reviews, but it's not the only one, right? So with Google pushing pause, I think it makes sense to shift focus to if you've got first-party reviews coming in, if you're sending out surveys to customers, pay extra close attention to that feedback. And then look at other sites as well, right? Facebook is still processing reviews. Yelp is still processing reviews. We'll talk a little bit more about that next. But and then vertical-specific directories as well, right? Just because Google's the largest doesn't mean it's the only one. I think this is a good opportunity to start to focus on some of those other publishers and review sources.
And I would just add to Ryan's point, Google has come out and clarified and said they are storing all new reviews that are being added to your business with, potential plans of publishing those at a later date once they've gone through, this review process, when they have the staff to review it. So keep that in mind that, while you want to make shifts to your strategy to, maybe collect more first-party reviews or other sites, that, you don't want to ignore Google altogether. But what they aren't storing are review responses. So don't have your staff or whatever method you have of responding to reviews today wasting their times now. But that's also something you want to plan when this does get lifted, whether it's a week, a month, 2 months, that you're likely going to have a number of reviews to, that are unresponded, and you want to think about what that looks like. So whether it's just like, we appreciate you, supporting us during, the weird things that are happening and that kind of thing, it is something that you'll want to keep in mind as a strategy going forward.
Absolutely. And continuing on the theme of reputation management and reviews, as we mentioned a moment ago, Yelp has also made some updates to their guidelines around the time that Google made their announcement. So maybe starting with Ryan, can you speak to any of the recent updates that Yelp has made and any guidance you may have for brands that are focused on Yelp reviews?
For sure. Yeah. So where Google has taken the approach of kind of pressing pause on publishing new reviews, Yelp has gone kind of a different direction. They've implemented some more stringent content guidelines. The goal there is really, and I think it's the same goal that Google has, they're just going about it in a different way. They're trying to prevent, brands or businesses from, reputational harm as a result of, COVID-related feedback that may be out of their control. So any claims from reviewers about, contracting COVID-19 after visiting a business or from an employee, those will be removed. Even negative reviews about operational changes, right? So if you've switched to, curbside only or online only, depending on your vertical, or if you're closed entirely and someone's leaving a review, sort of complaining about that, those types of things will also be filtered out and removed. And none of those reviews will have an impact on your star rating on Yelp either.
Excellent. So thinking a little bit more about other ways that brands can communicate updates with customers, one of the most prominent features that has emerged are Google Posts. And we've seen a lot of brands really utilizing these in great ways to communicate special services, updated hours, and just other general information related to COVID-19 and how it impacts their business. Krystal, maybe you can talk a little bit more about the new Google Post COVID-19 post type, how it works, how brands can utilize it, and just anything you're seeing with Google Posts.
Yeah, so this was rolled out, recently, a brand new post type available to every business that has posts, or it should be. So if you have posts and for some reason you're not seeing the COVID-19 post, then you'll want to reach out to Google to see why. But it is a kind of simplified version of a post. It just has the option to add a description and add a URL, maybe to learn more information about changes to your business, or maybe there's an action like, place your order online, get ready for pickup, that kind of thing. But the intention really is to communicate changes or lack of changes to your business, whatever that may be. So if you're a retailer, you want to talk about, maybe changes to what you can offer customers, whether it's contactless pickup of their order, or maybe you still are open because you are an essential business and you want to share how you're keeping both customers and an employee safe. So maybe that means limiting the amount of people in the store at a time, keeping distance, that type of element. It's also great, if you're a restaurant, to highlight maybe specials or deals. I know I called my local restaurant last weekend to place an order, and they're like, yeah, we're giving 15% off right now. And I had no idea. It was a surprise, but potentially they could have gotten more business if they were to utilize or leverage posts to promote something like that. So outside of COVID-19 posts, think of other types of posts that you may not have considered previously, but since there's so many eyes on your kind of digital door right now, promote other things that are going on. If you haven't explored Google Posts before, this is definitely the time to use them.
And just one follow-up question on that I've definitely seen brands asking is there any advantage to using the COVID-19 post type as opposed to other Google Post types?
So there are, it doesn't allow you to add media. So if you have something like an image or a video that you want to add, you're going to have to use a different post type. But it does display a little bit higher on mobile. Google did want to raise its prominence, so it displays in the place where an offer post typically would display. On desktop, it's still kind of at the bottom. but it is front and center. You know, it's very prominent on maps as well. It shows like the COVID-19 update with important information. So if you think of it, you know, the COVID-19 type of Google post as informational and not necessarily promotional, it is a really good use. It's also available to chains now via API, so that's great. You know, they're not able to use any other type of post. They weren't able to submit posts via API prior to this. So, you know, Google's really illustrating how important communicating this information is to brands of all sizes.
Absolutely. And thinking a little bit about updating media and other aspects of your GMB profile, I want to go quickly to a question that we received from the audience. What aspects of your profile can you update on GMB currently? Are you able to update photos? What other elements are you able to update, and which can you not update at this time?
So I want to be clear that you can update everything. It's just the delay at which it publish. And that is for all fields other than Q&A. So Q&A is gone completely from your profile. So that's been taken away, but everything else can still be edited. It's just based on your business type, you're going to see delays in a lot of your edits. The things that Google's prioritizing that should not have delays, and I say should because I've seen differences with my own eyes, are description, special hours, attributes, and posts. Those should all go live in the standard time frame that you would see normally, which varies based on industry. You know, if Google thinks you're a very trustworthy industry, then that usually goes live faster. If you're in one that, you know, is susceptible to a lot of spam listings, sometimes it is a little bit slower to publish. But those are the 4 elements that Google says should not have delays to business profiles.
Great, thank you, Krystal. That's really helpful, I think. As businesses consider, you know, the best ways to keep their GMB profiles up to date. One of the other recent changes that we've seen Google make is the addition of temporary closures. And maybe Ryan, you can discuss a little bit about temporary closures versus utilizing special hours. There's been some debate around that, which one is better for businesses to be using. Do you have any recommendations there?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, both options here are going to communicate that your business is closed. They just do it in slightly different ways, right? So the temp closed banner gives you that bold red banner in the knowledge panel. It's very clear, right, that the location is closed. Hours aren't displayed at all on the listing. And then if you had any events that were linked to that location, those are also removed from the knowledge panel. With special hours, you still have, you know, the hours section published. You would just be marking your location as closed for, you know, however many days you expect to be closed. And of course, that can be a moving target in these times. So the rest of the profile is the same though. The other big difference is, and this matters a lot, right, for enterprise brands, special hours can be updated in bulk or via the API. So if you've got, you know, 500, 1,000, 10,000 locations, using that temp closed banner, which has to be added manually 1 location at a time, is kind of an arduous process, right? And may not really be worth it. So we've been recommending a lot for enterprise clients with, you know, larger footprints, is to use that special hours approach. Leave the rest of the profile unchanged. You know, maybe add an update to your description, add a Google post, but given the manual lift on adding that temp closed banner, it doesn't always make sense for enterprise brands. That said, I think Krystal referenced this before, in some cases, Google is proactively marking that temp closed, marking locations as temp closed using that banner. If you see that and you don't want that to be published, you can use the API to mark your location as open. So if it's something that, you know, you want to use special hours and keep that banner off of your listing, you do have the opportunity to do that in bulk or through the API. You just can't add the banner through the API unless that changes, in which case we'll do another webinar and update you guys on that. But at this point, it's still manual.
Yeah, and I think what's great is right now, Google is in this state of really listening to consumers and consumers of Google My Business, so agencies alike. And a lot of the feedback we've been providing them is really being listened to and acted on in a quicker manner than I've seen, quite honestly, in a while. So one of the hesitations, I think, like Ryan said, from our last webinar series is we weren't really suggesting temporarily closed because there was an impact on visibility and, potential concern about ranking, but Google's fixed that. They took a very quick stance and, it will not impact ranking. Temporarily closed now acts as if your business is open. So that's really, really helpful to share. That, people that were concerned about using temporarily closed previously, if you truly want to keep people away from your business, I think, considering the temporary closed status is an option. Of course, granted, you don't got hundreds or thousands that you need to publish. The other thing I would add is, with that in mind, that Google is really listening to what consumers need to communicate on their profiles. If there's something that you really, really need to communicate, but there's just not the space or the place to put it in Google My Business, this is when I think you should kind of share your opinions on the Google My Business forum. They're really taking a look at things like by appointment only and additional hours and everything that we've been, kind of sharing and bringing to the table in the past, couple of years. I think it's showing how critical it is to have at a time like this. So, if you need additional elements added to your profile, or you think it would be great for your industry to have features that don't exist, I would definitely share that feedback on the Google My Business forum, because there's definitely a lot of traffic to it and attention to it right now from both the product experts and the Google My Business team.
Absolutely. I think that's great insight there, and definitely a lot of interest in this area. We're getting a few questions. I want to jump to those before we move to the next topic. So something that's probably relevant for many multi-location brands. Is it possible to redirect traffic from a location that is temporarily closed to another nearby location that is still open? I'll throw this out to both of you. And is this maybe an opportunity for brands to use local landing pages? What can a brand do to redirect some of that traffic?
Yeah, so what we've done is, you can't seamlessly do it on Google My Business. So there's not like, a button to say, go here. But what we've done is we've communicated that via Google Posts. So, if the stores go by a certain neighborhood name or, the address, highlighting that, this location is closed, but visit our other location that is offering, free pickup or free delivery, and they're still operating, check their hours, that kind of thing. But this is a great opportunity to leverage your local landing pages. You definitely have more space to communicate those types of things, to highlight locations that are open and highlight locations that are closed, or maybe have limited services and service offerings. Ryan, did you have any other suggestions there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this is where your local pages really come into play, right? I mean, you've got obviously total control there to build out logic on stores that are temporarily closed, to maybe put a banner or a call to action further up the page that can highlight the nearest open store, for example. That's really the best place to make that known to consumers. And to Krystal's point, you could also combine that strategy with a Google post to encourage users to, for example, posting on a closed location where the call to action of the post is to find your nearest open store, right? You could land them then on basically a pre-filtered search page, right? That's filtered only for stores that are currently open. Would be a good way to solve for that.
Great insight there again. And one follow-up question before we move to the next topic. This may be something that's common with brands. Let us know if this is something either of you have been seeing. Somebody asks, we've used special hours to close our locations through April 15th, and it worked for about 2 days, and then they were all marked as permanently closed. Have you guys seen this happen with any other brands, and is there anything that you'd recommend to facilitate this?
So I haven't seen this specific use case happen, but I've seen similar things. And this is where I'm saying there's a lot of, I think, confusion right now with data getting to Google. And I think it's expected because some of these features were rolled out really quickly and kind of, in a siloed environment. So I imagine the data that they're now sourcing from places like the government that's saying this specific area is on lockdown, so unless you're this type of industry, all businesses are closed, and whether Google's pushing that as temporarily closed or permanently closed or overriding special hours, I think it's not working as perfectly as it could. From here, like, all I can suggest at the moment is to monitor what you're doing. Don't, set your locations as closed, leveraging special hours, and then not go back in and check. I think you have to keep an eye on them, or tell your agency to keep an eye on them. And then, if it persists, just post a screenshot, include your information, post it to the Google My Business forum, because, I don't think that's Google's intention to create all this confusion, but if they're not aware of it, they can't fix it. So I think this is a perfect use case to try and get some feedback from the Google My Business team on.
Yeah, and we've seen the temporarily closed banner get applied maybe a little bit overzealously by Google, but permanently closed, is a little bit more serious, right? That can actually have impacts on visibility and ranking, and so that would be something, whether it's managed in-house or through your agency, that you'd want to jump on, and probably get in touch with Google support to have that resolved.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention to round that out that if there are any unique circumstances surrounding that, please feel free to send us an email, and we're happy to help troubleshoot that as best we can. So just moving along, a lot of great questions coming in. Please do keep those questions coming, and we'll get to as many of them by the end of the webinar as possible. So another topic here related to new GMB attributes, and obviously the restaurant vertical is one that's been hit particularly hard by these changes. Google has recently introduced some new GMB attributes that restaurants can use and really benefit from, I think, during this time. Maybe Krystal, to start off, can you discuss what these new GMB attributes are and how restaurants can begin implementing them?
Yeah, and one of the things I will say about attributes is Google designed it in a way that all new attributes, or most new attributes, I will say, can be managed in bulk and via API and manually within the GMB UI. So that's always great news for our multi-location brands. For restaurants specifically, they are highlighting some existing attributes. So there's offerings that include things like takeout and dine-in that existed previously, and now they're highlighting them on search results and in the map pack, mostly on mobile, whether you do or do not offer these options. So if it's something you didn't have set properly previously, or kind of ignored those attributes, they're really important to take a look at now. And now they're also adding additional attributes for restaurants that include curbside pickup is one of the newest ones. I think, they plan to roll out a couple additional ones for restaurants and retailers as well. But curbside pickup is one of the newest attributes that it's available. And then what we noticed, just in the last day or so, is that on maps, previously when there are restaurant brands, the label underneath the business on maps would say something like, this is a diner, a 50s style diner. It's kind of a tagline about your business that was written by Google. And now we're seeing those replaced with those offerings. So it'll say takeout and curbside available, or takeout available at this location. So in addition to it just displaying on your profile, it's actually now replaced that tagline on maps. So again, just keep an eye on it. Definitely add those, because they're really important elements to have in your business right now.
Great. And sticking on the restaurant vertical for just a moment, I think this is a fantastic question that we got from the audience. So I'd like to jump to it. Someone in the food service industry is asking about GoFundMe pages. A lot of those have been popping up to raise funds for restaurant employees. Is there anything restaurants can do through GMB or from an SEO perspective in order to promote any donation pages that they may have?
Yeah, I would say this is another perfect use case for a Google post, right? You want to leverage the visibility of your listing there to get that message out. I would say in this case, you could either go with the COVID-19 type post, which has a little bit higher visibility, but is purely text-based, or you could consider using a standard what's new post, or even an event type post to keep it up longer, where you could add some creative, right, an image or a video that can sort of help get that message across. I think the other thing from an SEO standpoint is on page, right, with your store locator, your individual location page, helping tell that story, right, adding some content around exactly why you're starting this initiative, how the funds will be used, etc., with a call to action. Would certainly be a good way to leverage SEO and GMB to get that message out.
Excellent. And I want to jump to our last topic for today before we move on to some of the additional questions that we've received as we're rounding out the half hour here. And this one's related to some COVID-19 notices that we began seeing earlier this week on listings and events that appear with an alert symbol. So going back to Krystal, when are we seeing these notices, and are businesses able to control their visibility at all?
So yeah, we definitely just started seeing these like this past weekend to early this week. Seen a number of users posted on Twitter. Right now, there's a number of industries that these are displayed on. So, retailers, a lot of service industries like, electricians and that type of thing. But essentially it says, business services and hours may vary due to COVID-19. So it's displayed now on the map pack results, it's displayed on search results, it's displayed on your actual business listing. And the only one that you can impact is the display on your business listing. So the notice will be removed if you either set special hours for an extended period of time. So not just like your Easter holiday hours, but you have a few days worth of hours during this time period loaded as special hours, or your business is marked temporarily closed. So telling Google that you've made the right updates to your business given this time. If you've just adjusted primary hours, that will not remove the notice. But if we do a follow-up after here, we did write in kind of detail all of these guidelines for local U. So we can include that link here. It shows, screenshots of what this looks like, details all of the industries that it's in, all of the industries that it's not in, and exactly where you can impact it and where you can't. In addition, I think, in the last day, Ryan and I noticed that there's also an alert that shows up when you go to get driving directions that shows this COVID-19 notice, but then also invites users to provide feedback to validate this information, which is one of my pet peeves because I hate suggested updates in Google My Business. And I think this could be, sending confusing information to Google about whether businesses are opened and closed. But it is displaying pretty prominently there as well.
Yeah, and the intent, right, from Google's standpoint is to try to crowdsource some feedback for maybe mom and pop type businesses that aren't actively managing their GMB listing. But to Krystal's point, yeah, for brands that are already doing a good job, it can just add sort of extra work for you or for your agency to go in and decline those updates if they differ from what the brand is actually trying to communicate.
Great, thank you both so much. Those are the majority of the topics that we wanted to cover today. Just a couple additional questions that we're getting from the audience here before we wrap up today. We talked a little bit about some of the new GMB attributes for restaurants. I think this is a great question. Are we seeing any other industries such as banking with any attributes similar to the restaurant attributes? For example, showing drive-through only on a bank where restaurants may be showing delivery.
So I'm not seeing any other industry specific attributes published live yet, but that doesn't mean they won't start.
We know it's available, right, for retail, that you can mark that curbside pickup attribute, but I haven't actually seen an example yet in the wild of any change to the customer facing search or maps experience. But to Krystal's point, and for how quickly things are changing, I wouldn't rule it out that could be displayed at some point in the future.
Yeah, so something definitely to continue to be on the lookout for, and obviously we'll share any additional updates as we start to see them in GMB. I want to go ahead and try to wrap up today. I'm gonna give you guys one final question that I think is a fantastic one to wrap up on. So what messaging and marketing recommendations, we can start with you, Krystal, and then we'll round out with you, Ryan, might you guys have, for once we can start to see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, for when, this crisis, starts to end 1, 2, 3 months down the road. Do you have any parting recommendations to share with brands to start to think about for once this pandemic is over?
So what I would probably do as we start to see, us kind of go down the hill, I don't know when that's going to be, but as we start kind of going down the hill of all of these closures and bans, is start reaching out to your customers to get feedback on what really worked during this process. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of consumer changes about what is acceptable from a business. So although you may have temporarily started offering all these different services, which ones are your consumers going to love regardless of what's going on, and how can you continue that and extend it, for, a longer period within your business, or adapt it, because a lot of these things were rolled out really quickly. I think that's going to be a really important element, and then to base your marketing on that. So, you can kind of come up with clever things like, even though we're outside of a pandemic, we still want to, serve you guys. We still want to, make this as easy as possible for you guys to, get our products, our services, and that type of thing. But don't be afraid to ask for feedback. Like, our goal as a brand was to make this as easy and helpful to our customers. How did we do, and what should we continue? What should we, never think about doing ever again? I would probably start there as we kind of move past this.
Thanks, Krystal. Any additional recommendations that you'd like to share, or closing thoughts there, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I think Krystal's exactly right. And not to sound like a pessimist, but the impacts of this are going to last for a long time, right? Possibly permanently, right? There's going to be a change in consumer behavior as a result. And I think, to Krystal's point, collecting that feedback now as you're trying new modes of operating, figuring out what's working, can sort of help sort of set the stage, right, for the next, for the months to come, as we, again, hopefully there is light at the end of the tunnel here, but this could be the new normal for a while, right? So figuring out how to adapt and how to sort of, from both a messaging and from an operational standpoint, continue to meet consumer needs is going to be critical.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. I think that's a fantastic way to round out the webinar today. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. But if you asked any questions that we were unable to address, we will definitely make sure to follow up with you via email. And if you think of any questions after the webinar, please feel free to send those our way as well. Once again, that's marketing@rioseo.com. Please keep an eye out on our website for the latest updates, and if there's any support we can provide, or if there's anything we can do to help your brand navigate these difficult times, we're happy to do so. We do have another webinar upcoming next week on planning for post-pandemic success, so very relevant to that last question that we just discussed. Please feel free to go ahead and sign up for that, and send us any questions you may have in advance. I want to just thank our panelists and thank everyone for joining us today. As we mentioned, we're going to continue to host these webinars as new updates become available. Please, everyone, stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to connecting with you again soon.